Hello everyone, it's me, it's Hedda, trying desperately to get us all comfortable today. Yom Tov, and I'm very happy to be with you all again. And I want to say hello to everybody, that if I've missed, sorry, I just seem to be trying to get myself more comfortable and, and sorted out. I do apologise for my appearance. I'm afraid I had, yesterday wasn't exactly the best day for me, and I woke up today extremely swollen. You should have seen me 8 hours ago. I could barely get my eyes sort of open from, as you can see, all the swelling underneath, and it's still pretty swollen up here. So I couldn't put any eye makeup on today, but you've seen me barefaced before, and if some of you have nightmares, then I apologise for them, but I've got nothing to hide. Here I am, warts and all, even though, I don't have any warts yet. Not yet. They'll come. But when they come, I'll be the first to share them. Depends, of course, where they are. Sometimes it can be too much information. Anyway, today on our Wednesday Folk Tales, it is my great pleasure to do another birthday dedication video, fast on the heels of last week's with Candace. This week's birthday video is dedicated to our Laura Cloutier. And Laura is the lady who has Hazel, our mascot of the Haven. And I showed you Hazel's picture in Monday's video. She's the one who has Hazel, and she's very kindly allowed us to adopt Hazel as our mascot. And as you know, Oscar, my cat, put an appearance in on Monday. I can't guarantee he's going to be with us today. I don't know if either of the big boys will be with me today. If they do ask to come up while I'm busy reading a story, then I'll let them come up and you can see them too. But it was amazing how much Oscar's appearance was liked. I didn't realise that having animals in videos was that important, but don't get me wrong, I'm not going to drag them in if they don't feel like it. If they're here, they're here, and if they're not, they're not. And I've managed for the last 7 months without them, 8 months now actually. So, like I said, if they do pop in the future, I'm sure you'll all be happy to see them. So, today is, I believe tomorrow is Laura's actual birthday. But she asked for a particular story. She said it would make her very happy if I read out this particular story for her. And it's by an author called Kate Chopin. And Kate wrote this story in 1896. It appeared in Vogue in 1897. And then I believe the next time it was noticed and put into publish was 1969. And I think the next time after that was 2006. So it's come a long way. It's over 100 years old, this story. But it's a lovely little story. And I want to say to Laura, happy birthday, Laura. I hope you have a wonderful day, as special as you are when you do have it. Wish you nothing but good health, wealth, happiness, and lots of love, and then some. I'm also going to wish you a happy birthday on behalf of all the Haveners. And I really do hope that you enjoy your story today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this story, and then if we've got time after it, which I think we will do if I squeeze it in, I'll read the final story from Beedle the Bard, and then we'll be done with Beedle the Bard. And so if that's okay with you guys, I'm going to forge on ahead. One more thing I wanted to show you just before we begin. I want to show you my new baby. This is I've got a much smaller piece, but this is my new baby. It's a very heavy piece of selenite. It weighs about 4 pounds in weight. I believe that's about 2 kilos or something, which is very heavy, unbelievably fragile. If you drop her, she'll shatter into pieces. But she's one of these, she gets rid of all negativity. She's the one that's really good for getting rid of all negativity, a purging of it, is black tourmaline. But she's the one, she's a protector. She is the one that brings light. She brings clarity. She brings calm. Selenite is particularly good for women. Any woman everywhere. She's just an absolutely wonderful piece. She's great for people who read tarot, who meditate a lot. She's a very, very calming stone. And I just wanted to show her to you all. Isn't she, look at those, isn't she just gorgeous? She's got a lovely sort of, oh, they've got the wrong end there. She's got a lovely honey piece of selenite running through her right at the bottom there. But she's absolutely gorgeous. And I just wanted to share that with you. So there's an early birthday gift for you, Laura. I'm showing you my new piece of selenite. Because I do collect crystals. And if me collecting crystals is something that you would like to know about in a future video, just let me know. And I'm more than happy to talk about it with you. You know, there's more to me than just stories and life experiences and things, you know. I've got many different facets. Not all of them good, but I'm human like the rest of us. So without further ado, I would like now to continue with our birthday dedication. So, Laura, this is for you, and I really hope you enjoy my reading of it. So, please everyone, sit back, relax, while I read to you A Pair of Silk Stockings by Kate Chopin. And I really do hope you enjoy it. Little Mrs. Summers one day found herself the unexpected possessor of $15. It seemed to her a very large amount of money, and the way in which it stuffed and bulged her old worn portemonnaie gave her a feeling of importance such as she had not enjoyed for years. The question of investment was one that occupied her greatly. For a day or two she walked about apparently in a dreamy state, but really absorbed in speculation and calculation. She didn't wish to act hastily or to do anything she might afterward regret. But it was during the still hours of the night, when she lay awake, revolving plans in her mind, that she seemed to see her way clearly towards a proper and judicious use of the money. $1 or two should be added to the price usually paid for Janie's shoes, which would ensure their lasting an appreciable time longer than they usually did. She would buy so and so many yards of percale for new shirtwaists for the boys and Janie and Mag. She had intended to make the old ones do by skillful patching. Mag should have another gown. She had seen some beautiful patterns, veritable bargains in the shop windows. And still there would have been enough left over for new stockings, 2 pairs apiece. And what darning that would save for a while. She would get caps for the boys and hats for the girls. Sailor hats for the girls. The vision of her little brood looking fresh and dainty and new for once in their lives excited her and made her restless and wakeful with anticipation. The neighbours sometimes talked of certain better days that little Mrs. Summers had known before she'd ever thought of becoming Mrs. Summers. She herself indulged in no such morbid retrospection. She had no time, no second of her time to devote to the past. The needs of the present absorbed her every faculty. A vision of the future, like some dim, gaunt monster, sometimes appalled her. But luckily, tomorrow never comes. Mrs. Summers was one who knew the value of bargains, who would stand for hours making her way inch by inch towards the desired object that was selling below cost. She could elbow her way if need be. She had learned to clutch a piece of goods and hold it and stick to it with persistence and determination till her time came to be served, no matter when it came. But that day she was a little faint and tired. She had swallowed a light luncheon. No, when she came to think of it, Between getting the children fed and the place righted and preparing herself for the shopping bout, she'd actually forgotten to eat any luncheon at all. She sat herself upon a revolving stool before a counter that was comparatively deserted, trying to gather strength and courage to charge through an eager multitude that was besieging breastworks of shirting and figured lawn. An all-gone limp feeling had come over her, and she rested her hand aimlessly upon the counter. She wore no gloves. By degrees she grew aware that her hand had encountered something very soothing, very pleasant to touch. She looked down to see that her hand lay on a pile of silk stockings. A placard nearby announced that they had been reduced in price from $2.50 to $1.98, and a young girl who stood behind the counter asked her if she was to examine their line of silk hosiery. She smiled, just as if she'd been asked to inspect a tiara of diamonds with the ultimate view of purchasing it. But she went on feeling the soft, sheeny, luxurious things with both hands now, holding them up to see them glisten and to feel them glide serpent-like through her fingers. 2 hectic blotches suddenly came into her pale cheeks. She looked up at the girl. "Do you think there are any 8.5s in here?" There were any number of 8.5s. In fact, there were more of that size than any other. Here was a light blue pair, there was some lavender, some all black, and various shades of tan and grey. Mrs. Summers selected a black pair and looked at them very long and closely. She pretended to be examining their texture, which the clerk assured her was excellent. $1.98, she mused aloud. "Well, I'll take this pair." She handed the girl a $5 bill and waited for her change and her parcel. What a very small parcel it was. It seemed lost in the depths of her shabby old shopping bag. Mrs. Summers, after that, didn't move in the direction of the bargain counter. She took the elevator, which carried her to an upper floor into the region of the ladies' waiting rooms. Here, in a retired corner, she exchanged her cotton stockings for the new silk ones that she'd just bought. She wasn't going to go through any actual mental process or reasoning with herself, nor was she striving to explain to her satisfaction the motive of her action. She wasn't thinking at all. She seemed for the time to be taking a rest from that laborious and fatiguing function and to have abandoned herself to some mechanical impulse that directed her actions and freed her of responsibility. How good was the touch of the raw silk to her flesh. She felt like lying back in the cushioned chair and revelling for a while in the luxury of it. She did for a little while. Then she replaced her shoes, rolled the cotton stockings together and thrust them into her bag. After doing this, she crossed straight over to the shoe department and took her seat to be fitted. She was fastidious. The clerk could not make her out. He couldn't reconcile her shoes with her stockings, and she was not too easily pleased. She held back her skirts and turned her foot one way and her head the other as she glanced down at the pointed, polished, tipped boots. Her foot and ankle looked very pretty. She couldn't realise that they belonged to her and were a part of herself. She wanted an excellent and stylish fit, she told the young fellow who served her, and she didn't mind the difference of $1 or $2 more in the price, so long as she got what she desired. It was a long time since Mrs. Summers had been fitted with gloves. On rare occasions when she bought a pair, they were always bargains. So cheap that it would have been preposterous and unreasonable to have expected them to be fitted to the hand. Now she rested her elbow on the cushion of the glove counter, and a pretty, pleasant young creature, delicate and deft of touch, drew a long-wristed kid over Mrs. Summers' hand. She smoothed it down over the wrist and buttoned it neatly, and both lost themselves for a second or two in admiring contemplation of the little symmetrical gloved hand. But there were other places where money might be spent. There were books and magazines piled up in the window of a stall a few paces down the street. Mrs. Summers bought 2 high-priced magazines such as she had been accustomed to read in the days when she had been accustomed to other pleasant things. She carried them without wrapping. As well as she could, she lifted her skirts at the crossings. Her stockings and boots and well-fitted gloves had worked marvels in her bearing, had given her a feeling of assurance, a sense of belonging to the well-dressed multitude. She was very hungry. Another time she would have stilled the cravings for food until reaching her own home, where she would have brewed herself a cup of tea and taken a snack of anything that was available. But the impulse that was guiding her wouldn't suffer her to entertain any such thought. There was a restaurant at the corner. She'd never entered its doors. From the outside she'd sometimes caught glimpses of spotless damask and shining crystal, and soft-stepping waiters serving people of fashion. When she entered, her appearance created no surprise, no consternation, as she half feared it might. She seated herself at a small table alone, and an attentive waiter at once approached to take her order. She didn't want a profusion. She craved a nice and tasty bite. A half-dozen blue points, a plump chop with cress, something sweet, a creme frappé, for instance, a glass of Rhine wine, and after all, a small cup of black coffee. While waiting to be served, she removed her gloves very leisurely and laid them beside her. Then she picked up a magazine and glanced through it, cutting the pages with a blunt edge of her knife. It was all very agreeable. The damask was even more spotless than it seemed through the window, and the crystal more sparkling. There were quiet ladies and gentlemen who didn't notice her, lunching at the small tables like our own. A soft, pleasing strain of music could be heard, and a gentle breeze was blowing through the window. She tasted a bite, and she read a word or two, and she sipped the amber wine and wriggled her toes in the silk stockings. The price of it made no difference. She counted the money out to the waiter and left an extra coin on his tray, whereupon he bowed before her as of a princess of the royal blood. There was still money in her purse, and her next temptation presented itself in the shape of a matinee poster. It was a little later when she entered the theatre. The play had begun, and the house seemed to her to be packed. But there were vacant seats here and there, and into one of them she was ushered between brilliantly dressed women who had gone there to kill time and eat candy and display their gaudy attire. There were many others who were there solely for the play and acting. It's safe to say that no one person quite bore the attitude which Mrs. Summers did to her surroundings. She gathered in the whole thing, the stage and players and people, in one wide impression, and absorbed it and enjoyed it. She laughed at the comedy and wept. She and the gaudy woman next to her wept over the tragedy, and they talked a little together over it, and the gaudy woman wiped her eyes and sniffled on a tiny square of filmy, perfumed lace, and passed little Mrs. Summers her box of candy. The play was over, the music ceased, and the crowd filled out. It was like a dream ended. People scattered in all directions. Mrs. Summers went to the corner and waited for the cable car. A man with keen eyes who sat opposite to her seemed to like the study of her small, pale face. It puzzled him to decipher what he saw there. In truth, he saw nothing, unless he were a wizard enough to detect a poignant wish, a powerful longing that the cable car would never stop anywhere, but go on and on with her forever. And there you are. Laura, I really hope that you enjoyed my reading of A Pair of Silk Stockings. And a very happy birthday to you. Now, we do have some time. It might take us a little bit over our time today, but here we are. Our friend Beedle the Bard. So please allow me to read for you a story which is entitled Babbitty Rabbitty and Her Cackling Stump. Intriguing. Are we all sitting comfortably? Well, I'm trying to. Anyway, of course it would help if I had the proper reading glasses on as well. Right, are we sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. A long time ago, in a far-off land, there lived a foolish king who decided that he alone should have the power of magic. He therefore commanded the head of his army to form a brigade of witch hunters and issued them with a pack of ferocious black hounds. At the same time, the king caused proclamations to be read in every village and town across the land. Wanted by the king, an instructor in magic. No true witch or wizard dared volunteer for the post, for they were all in hiding from the brigade of witch hunters. However, a cunning charlatan with no magical power at all saw a chance of enriching himself and arrived at the palace claiming to be a wizard of enormous skill. The charlatan performed a few simple tricks which convinced the foolish king of his magical powers and was immediately appointed Grand Sorcerer-in-Chief, the king's private magic master. The charlatan bade the king give him a large sack of gold so that he might purchase wands and other magical necessities. He also requested several large rubies to be used in the casting of curative charms and a silver chalice or two for the storing and maturing of potions. All these things the foolish king supplied. The charlatan stowed the treasure safely in his own house and returned to the palace grounds. He didn't know that he was being watched by an old woman who lived in a hovel on the edge of the grounds. Her name was Babbitty, and she was the washerwoman who kept the palace linen soft, fragrant and white. Peeping from behind her drying sheets, Babbitty saw the charlatan snap 2 twigs from one of the king's trees and disappear into the palace. The charlatan gave one of the twigs to the king and assured him it was a wand of tremendous power. It will only work, however, said the charlatan, when you are worthy of it. Get out of jail free card, kids, eh? Every morning the charlatan and the foolish king walked out into the palace grounds, where they waved their wands and shouted nonsense at the sky. The charlatan was careful to perform more tricks, so the king remained convinced of his grand sorcerer's skill and the power of the wands that had cost so much gold. One morning, as the charlatan and the foolish king were twirling their twigs and hopping in circles and chanting meaningless rhymes, a loud cackling reached the king's ears. Babbitty the washerwoman was watching the king and the charlatan from the window of her tiny cottage and was laughing so hard she soon sank out of sight, too weak to stand. "I must look most undignified to make the washerwoman laugh so," said the king. He ceased his hopping and twig twirling and frowned. I grow weary of this practice. When shall I be ready to perform real spells in front of my subjects, sorcerer? The charlatan tried to soothe his pupil, assuring him that he would soon be capable of astonishing feats of magic. But Babbitty's cackling had stung the foolish king more than the charlatan knew. "Tomorrow," said the king, "we shall invite our court to watch their king perform magic." The charlatan saw that the time had come to take his treasure and flee. "Alas, your majesty, it's impossible. I had forgotten to tell your majesty that I must set out for a long journey tomorrow." "If you leave this palace without my permission, sorcerer, my brigade of witch hunters will hunt you down with their hounds. Tomorrow morning you will assist me to perform magic for the benefit of my lords and ladies, and if anybody laughs at me, I shall have you beheaded." The king stormed back to the palace, leaving the charlatan alone and afraid. Not all of his cunning could save him now, for he couldn't run away, nor could he help the king with magic that neither of them knew. Seeking a vent for his fear and anger, the charlatan approached the window of Babbitty, the washerwoman. Peering inside, he saw the little old lady sitting at her table, polishing a wand. In the corner behind her, the king's sheets were washing themselves in a wooden tub. The charlatan understood at once that Babbitty was a true witch, and that she who had given him his awful problem could also solve it. "Crone," roared the charlatan, "your cackling has cost me dear. If you fail to help me, I shall denounce you as a witch, and it will be you who is torn apart by the king's hounds." Old Babbitty smiled at the charlatan and assured him that she would do everything in her power to help. The charlatan instructed her to conceal herself inside a bush while the king gave his magical display, and to perform the king's spells for him without his knowledge. Babbitty agreed to the plan, but asked one question. "What, sir, if the king attempts a spell Babbitty cannot perform?" The charlatan scoffed. "Your magic is more than equal to that fool's imagination," he assured her, and he retired to the castle, well pleased with his own cleverness. The following morning all the lords and ladies of the kingdom assembled in the palace grounds. The king climbed onto a stage in front of them, with the charlatan by his side. "I shall firstly make this lady's hat disappear," cried the king, pointing his twig at a noblewoman. From inside a bush nearby, Babbitty pointed her wand at the hat and caused it to vanish. Great was the astonishment and admiration of the crowd, and loud applause there was for the jubilant king. "Next, I shall make that horse fly," cried the king, pointing his twig at his own steed. From inside the bush, Babbitty pointed her wand at the horse, and it rose high into the air. The crowd was still more thrilled and amazed, and they roared their appreciation of their magical king. "And now," said the king, looking all around for an idea, and the captain of his brigade of witch hunters ran forwards. "Your Majesty," said the king, "this very morning Sabre died of eating a poisonous toadstool. Bring him back to life, your Majesty, with your wand." And the captain heaved onto the stage the lifeless body of the largest of the witch-hunting hounds. The foolish king brandished his twig and pointed it at the dead dog. But inside the bush, Babbitty smiled and did not trouble to lift her wand, for no magic can raise the dead. When the dog didn't stir, the crowd began first to whisper and then to laugh. They suspected that the king's first two feats had been mere tricks after all. "Why doesn't it work?" the king screamed at the charlatan, who bethought himself the only ruse left to him. "There, your Majesty, there," he shouted, pointing at the bush where Babbitty sat concealed. "I see her plain. A wicked witch who is blocking your magic with her own evil spells. Seize her, somebody, seize her." Babbitty fled from the bush, and the brigade of witch hunters set off in pursuit, unleashing their hounds who bayed for Babbitty's blood. But as she reached a low hedge, the little witch vanished from sight, and when the king, the charlatan, and all the courtiers gained the other side, they found the pack of witch-hunting hounds barking and scrabbling around a bent and aged tree. "She's turned herself into a tree!" screamed the charlatan, and dreading lest Babbitty turn back into a woman and denounce him, he added, "Cut her down, your majesty. That is the way to treat evil witches." An axe was brought at once, and the old tree was felled to loud cheers from the courtiers and the charlatan. However, as they were making ready to return to the palace, the sound of loud cackling stopped them in their tracks. "Fools!" cried Babbitty's voice from the stump they'd left behind. "No witch or wizard can be killed by being cut in half. Take the axe if you do not believe me, and cut the grand sorcerer in two." The captain of the brigade of witch hunters was eager to make the experiment, but as he raised the axe, the charlatan fell to his knees, screaming for mercy and confessing all his wickedness. As he was dragged away to the dungeons, the tree stump cackled more loudly than ever. "By cutting a witch in half, you have unleashed a dreadful curse upon your kingdom," it told the petrified king. "Henceforth, every stroke of harm that you inflict upon my fellow witches and wizards will feel like an axe stroke in your own side, until you will wish you could die of it." At that, the king fell to his knees too, and told the stump that he would issue a proclamation at once, protecting all the witches and wizards of the kingdom, and allowing them to practice their magic in peace. "Very good," said the stump, "but you have not yet made amends to Babbitty." Anything at all," cried the foolish king, wringing his hands before the stump. "You will erect a statue of Babbitty upon me, in memory of your poor washerwoman, and to remind you forever of your own foolishness," said the stump. The king agreed to it at once, and promised to engage the foremost sculptor in the land, and have the statue made of pure gold. Then the shamed king and all the noblemen and women returned to the palace, leaving the tree stump cackling behind them. When the grounds were deserted once more, there wriggled from the hole, between the roots of the tree stump, a stout and whiskery old rabbit, with a wand clamped between her teeth. Babbitty hopped out of the grounds and far away, and ever after a golden statue of the washerwoman stood upon the tree stump, and no witch or wizard was ever persecuted in the kingdom again. And there we have now finished all the tales from Beedle the Bard. And this brings us, just over our time together. So again, Laura, I wish you a very, very happy birthday. I'm sorry I don't have much of natural, I've got natural light, but it's starting to get dark here now. It's 5 o'clock UK time, and it's starting to get a bit dull, and I can't reach the light switch, so I'm afraid you're going to have to deal with me half shadow, half whatever greyness that there is out there. We haven't seen the sun in days now. Not since last weekend anyway. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you very much for watching. Again, Laura, very, very happy birthday to you. I hope everybody enjoyed today's stories. For our supernatural crew, our paranormal crew, I will see you on Friday with more stories. And in the meantime, I will see all of you very, very soon. Take care, and I love you all. Bye-bye for now. Bye.